Hi. So another story time today. Today's topic is going to be on youth. So just talking about growing up and what it was like for me sometimes and how it impacts us and how do we give hope to the next generation of youth. And that's actually the main purpose of why I'm even talking about today's topic is because I'm getting so many different reports about how our youth are suffering so many different ways and they don't have appropriate or active outlets. And people often forget, especially older people, adults, we forget what it was like to be young. And we forget what our experiences were like, or sometimes we live too much in those experiences while we were young and don't grow past it. So, basically, the point of this is to hopefully inspire the next generation and also motivate the current generation as well as the past generation and everything going forward to work together, focus on hope, love, and humanity, and just try to work on improving things so we all grow together. But talking about the youth, I was just reminiscing about what it was like for me growing up. My parents were remarkable. They always did the best that they could. They absolutely could. But I mean, no matter what, even if you were completely raised in a sterile environment. So let's go back even to the example of Cain and Abel, right? So talking about the supposed beginning of humankind and basically there was no gang influence at that time or whatever. Because even then, even though it's funny because you talk about people talk about gangs, but they also call themselves an organization. Anyway, besides those different politics and detailed descriptions of how what people are, um, at that time during Cain and Abel, essentially within the human spirit and soul itself, we are tempted sometimes. Sometimes we're tempted by jealousy, contempt, just all sorts of different emotions. The key thing is that we have to control our emotions and contain ourselves to focus on the other. Because if we focus purely on self, it basically ends up becoming purely self focused. And when you do that, essentially, you don't really seem to care about what happens to others. And the people, some of the most successful people throughout time, if you look at them, they were not really self focused, they were other people focused. So by focusing on others, we grow together. I mean, even if you're thinking about it from a purely selfish perspective, and let's say wanted to be the ultimate, most selfish person in the world, if everyone thrives with me, it minimizes their incentive to basically want to harm me and rob from me and steal from me. Because if we're all not starving, then the main incentive for violence, for the most part, is for pretty much removed. I mean, obviously, there's going to be individuals that we're not accounting for. We're not going to be talking about outliers. We're just talking about general stuff. But yeah, how does this tie back to the youth again? By focusing on the general good, we got to be able to give hope, to inspire goodness, to inspire love and patience and others and our youth. I mean, when I was thinking about it this morning, we need strong role models. We need strong mentors. People forget how actively aware young people are because when I was very young, a lot of the adults would sometimes treat us like we're complete morons, as if we were part of the invisible people, as if they would do things and then they'd be spelling out the bad stuff they would do as if I couldn't spell. Like, are you kidding me? I mean, I'll never forget when I was very young, we had teachers using Xanax and they were using cough syrup and Vicoprofen and all these different things. And one of the things also when I was very young is I had a picture a picture memory basically, so I could take snapshots in my mind and then recall the image later. And then, I mean, it helped me in school quite a bit. So I was able to basically take mental snapshots of my notes and recall it for tests, which is just straight memorization instead of actual critical thinking. But that also worked against me in some of these circumstances. Like I said, I would remember seeing the teacher pop, like smoke, take a particular pill, but not during class. Obviously, there was during breaks, and they were quickly having it in their desk, and they were like, "So I was swinging some cough syrup and stuff," which I didn't know, and then I would look it up later. But having that kind of memory, people forget that children are very aware, and they are watching and learning. So me as a kid, I was just watching and learning, and it was very fascinating to me that the very same people that were constantly talk to us about Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, all these inspirational leaders and how to make a difference in the world, these very same people were telling us, and putting on a face of positivity, but were absolutely miserable themselves. And it was something that I reflected upon as a child, because then I was thinking, I said, yet they're telling me to be hopeful, to do all this stuff, and to stay positive, and they were putting on a brave face, which incredibly, like I'm saying, I'm not insulting them in any way, shape, or form. That was brave, especially when you're focusing on other and trying to be brave for others when you are tormented yourself. It shows a tremendous amount of courage, but it also demonstrates how important it is to aspire for the best for the next generation. Because they could have sat back and just talked about all the absolute misery and diminished all of our hopes. You see, this is why we have to protect children. This is why we have to protect the next generation. Why we have to, I mean, there's a reason, like when you're working out, right? When you start exercising, you just don't go straight to the heavy weightlifting. You start small. You start with the lighter weight, and then you start progressively overloading and eventually getting to a point that you can start to develop the stronger muscles needed to be able to handle the heavier loads. You imagine giving a 5-year-old a 100-pound weight. I mean, some could be possible. Some kids handle it, but most will not. You're just overloading the capacity. I mean, for example, that's why there's a timing element when it comes to also that. But now, yeah, all these things are complex, and this is like this really all over the place rant. But that's why we, as the adults, have to keep things simplified. And by keeping things simplified, we can actually focus on what's important. And the simplest messages are the ones that carry the most. I mean, people jokingly said about comic books and had these anti-drug campaigns, and basically, oh, it was really corny and stupid. And like today, for example, in today's comic books, you sometimes don't see those anti-drug campaigns. But those things, especially when we were growing up, I mean, like I said, my parents did the best they could. They even sheltered as much as, but no matter how much you shelter somebody, the the challenges of society will continually. I mean, imagine even if you lock yourself in a perfectly safe room where you're completely isolated from the environment, you still have to battle your own thoughts, right? So it doesn't insulate you from evil. But in those particular circumstances, while growing up, some of the kids were drug dealers. So even in the more posh societies, they were just upscale drug dealers, but they were still drug dealers. And some of these kids were absolutely brilliant in terms of the mathematical capacity and business acumen, actually. I mean, I always used to think about this as a kid. I was like, imagine if we were trained correctly, what these kids could do. I mean, if they were able to convince us to buy XYZ or do XYZ, imagine if we were able to harness those skills for good. Anyway, so those simplistic messages as a kid, when I used to read that in comic books, for example, Luke Cage, I used to love Luke Cage because he used to be really hard on the potential drug dealers, and he was a no nonsense dude, and that simplicity helped inspire me quite a bit, and it used to help you stay strong during those challenging moments, because when you're dealing with all the complexities all around you, it's the simplest things that you can cling on to, and it's the simplest things you can recall. And that gives you power. That simplicity gives you power. Now, obviously, there's going to be a lot more complexity and stuff where we cannot account for everything. It's just not possible. But like I said, when you're in those moments of crisis, when you're in those moments of difficult decisions, when you're in those moments of challenge, that's when you start to really distill your thoughts. And then the most prominent ones, come to mind. But again, this rant, the whole point of this was to focus to my generation. I'm talking to us as well as we got to inspire hope in each other. And the youth, you must focus on the next generation after us. Hopefully, I'm speaking to a generation that I probably will never see. It's like you're planting seeds of a tree that's going to bear fruit, but you won't see it. But the benefits will be felt for generations. And then, like I said, if you ultimately really think about it, for all of us to be successful, we must survive. And how do we survive? And then we thrive, and then we grow. Just surviving alone is not necessarily a life in itself. For example, the World Health Organization's definition of health isn't just an absence of disease. It also takes into account financial well-being and mental health and all these other things. for example, that need to be accounted for, to account for the whole person. We, as a human being, we're wonderful, and people just need to accept themselves as they are, for who they are. And you know, that brings me to another thought, actually, because I've seen so many adults miserable throughout their lives because they cannot be who they are. They put on this false sense of, okay, I'm going to be how everyone else wants me to be. I think this is what they want. And I was just talking to my wife about this earlier this morning, where essentially my autism, I think, has shielded me and protected me in so many different ways because I don't frankly care what other people think. I mean, I do in certain aspects, but for the most part, just be who you are. And because of that, I just see people for who they are and how they are, and I love them for who they are. Unless they're going to do like something where they're going to hurt multiple people and stuff like that. People that are conscious and caring for others, those are my people. But people that are selfish and don't care about anyone else, I really don't jive with people like that. So, but again, you get to see the beauty in humanity, and there is a lot more good in this world than there is evil. However, the evil shouts the loudest. So the evil ones are the ones that make the most noise and really end up creating the most disruption. But the majority of people I've learned throughout my life and my experiences are good. They want to do good. They want to live peaceful lives. So how do we facilitate that? Again, love, hope, and patience. So if there's anyone that's older listening to this or anyone that's younger, especially our youth, and the reason why the topic of the youth was coming up this morning is because they were talking about a significant portion between the ages of 13 to 18. They don't know what to do with this generation. They don't know what to do with them. They don't know how to actively keep them engaged. School essentially is a prison, and they're talking about it like it's a recent thing. And I was reflecting back on my time. When you make school mandatory, which I'm not saying it shouldn't be, that's not at all what I'm talking about. But when you're forcing everyone, and then all of a sudden when you turn 18, now you have the liberation of freedom to do what you want, you don't realize, like I said, it's like a prison system. So instead of allowing the child to develop who they are, how they are, we are kind of indoctrinating them. This is how you should be. This is what should be acceptable. This is what, and all of that just keeps changing with society as time goes on. But there are certain core fundamentals of goodness that should be instilled throughout. And also, school should be focusing on skill development and personal development. But it's really not, unfortunately. And our current model is more focused on creating the appearance of functional adults and functional members of society. But in reality, it's just like a supercar that looks amazing, but has the, I don't know, a motorcycle engine that can't really push the power, the beautiful body that it has. I mean, imagine having a Lamborghini, but you end up finding out it has the engine of a Toyota four-cylinder engine. It doesn't match up with the appearances versus the actual capabilities. So we need to be more focused on the bottom line and how do we advance forward as a society? How do we advance forward as human beings? But at the end of the day, we have to be united. We must care about each other. And that's what the youth is going to see. The youth is going to see us as adults now that we've become the adult. How do we act? How do we interact with one another? How do we set the example? Do we put on the fake mask again of, I'm absolutely miserable, but everything is perfect, everything is good, everything is amazing. But then when the kid's not looking, I'm secretly popping a bunch of cough syrup and alcohol or whatever else, whatever drug of choice, because that's how I level myself and I'm self-medicating. But instead of facing the reality, and really as adults, we need to be facing these realities ourselves, and how do we address the issues instead of just using the there's a famous thing about there's the longest river in the world called denial. Sorry, I'm a failed comedian. That's why I became a scientist. But yeah, we cannot live in the state of denial. It just doesn't work for anyone. So we as adults have to face the issues and then address it and solve them. And then we also must help create a roadmap for our youth so that way they can thrive and strive and succeed in the world. I mean, imagine that imagine I'm creating a huge mess, and then I tell my kid, I don't have a kid yet, but one day, hopefully, God willing, I will. And then I'm just like, yeah, it's your job, fix it, and good luck. And then imagine if I also guilt them by saying, by the way, I brought you in this world and I've sacrificed blah, 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 blah. So that way you can have a good life. And then the kid's still miserable because the kid doesn't have any of the tools to succeed. So now I have the emotional burden. In addition to that, I have the financial burden and all this other stuff thrown right onto the kid. And then when they turn 18, good luck, figure it out. It just doesn't make any sense. So again, hopefully this rant was useful to somebody, but I hope that we can focus on caring for one another and helping one another. And just a separate side note. The reason why I brought up the stuff with teachers before is because sometimes, like I said, we act like children are deaf, dumb, and blind. And basically, because we do this, it's like a child can't notice. Children, woo! I have learned. I mean, even when I was a kid, we catch on to small details, and sometimes we don't know how to process it, but we remember it. And I remember lots of things as a child I didn't understand, but now as an adult, I look back on it, I'm like, dude, what the hell was happening? I mean, I'll never forget an example. I grew up in Jamaica, Queens. I mean, I grew up in different areas, but Jamaica, Queens was one of them. I mean, basically, we went on a school trip, and as we were on that school trip, we were walking by several apartment complexes. And as we were walking by the apartment complexes, they had like this little dirt section that was supposed to have like plants and stuff, and nothing was growing. It was all dead. It was just a bunch of soil. But it was all their apartment windows were above and stuff. And I just saw a ton of needles. And the teacher, when they saw that, they were telling us to walk faster and just to ignore it. And I'll never forget, I was looking at all these needles in the dirt, and I said, my God. I said, there must be a lot of diabetics here. And the students looked at me like, what? Are you stupid? And then I looked at them, I was like, no. I said, why would all these needles be in the dirt like that? And then the teacher was getting frustrated with me because she was trying to get us to hurry along so we couldn't see it. And I was the one who saw it and noticed it. And I was just like, wow, there must be like a lot of diabetes or something. Then also it confused me because I asked them, I said, why are they throwing the needles out their windows? And because then at that point I got concerned. So I started walking closer to the street away from the sign. And I was like, what if someone throws a needle right now? I mean, look how stupid I am as a child. But I mean, as a kid, used to remember that. And I remember that now as an adult, I realized what was really going on. It wasn't diabetic. But yeah, the teacher just looked at me and she said, kid, you are special. And they just told us to ignore it and keep walking and hurry up so we can get to our destination. But yeah, it also shows you the framing of a child. That I didn't need to have my reality shattered at that point. Wow, there's a bunch of drug users here. It's just get me to a safe place and make sure that we're in an environment where we can thrive. I mean, so I don't know. There's so many different thoughts. The main thing is just to spark discussion so we can have a discussion about this. But at the end of the point, we have to remember at the end of the day, the point of all of this is that we want each other to succeed. I am because we are. I am nothing without you. You can be something without me, personally, me. But I'm just saying that we as a society, we won't exist if we don't care about each other. And we must. We function this way. We are like puzzle pieces that all interlock in different ways, complementing each other. I have skills that you don't have. You have skills that I don't have. But by zooming out and understanding that, but also understanding that the specialty of the skill doesn't necessarily raise or lower someone's importance. A plumber is just as important as anyone else. And that's another reason I mentioned that, because so many people, because when I was going to college, so many people that I knew would constantly insult blue-collar workers. But let me tell you, I don't care how many advanced degrees you have. When your toilet backs up, you're going to realize how important a plumber is. You're going to realize how important an electrician is when your electricity dies. And even though you have advanced theoretical knowledge of tons of things, you don't know how to connect a U-pipe or how to clear one, you will learn very quickly the importance of each other and the importance that other people specialize in things that you don't consider important, because to them it may be important. But yeah, I'm not going to let this rant go on forever. Care about each other. I care about you. You care about me, hopefully. And we grow together. Bye.